This is the place where more than 3,000 people lost their lives. On September 11, 2001, when the Twin Towers fell, the world saw what was above ground: fire, smoke, collapsing buildings. But nobody knew that the real danger was hiding beneath the ground. We are talking about a wall that, if it had moved even 1 inch, an entire section of New York City could have drowned underwater. Subway stations, tunnels, all of Lower Manhattan, and that wall was already damaged. Let's go back to the 1960s. New York City was about to start a project unlike anything ever attempted before: build the 2 largest buildings in the world. But the problem was, the land they chose wasn't really land. You want to hear the truth? Where One World Trade Center stands today, that entire area was actually part of the Hudson River. Over 400 years, people filled it in with dirt, rubble, broken ships, and city waste until it became solid ground. Simply put, those towers were literally built on top of an ancient riverbed. So engineers faced an impossible question: how do you build the world's largest buildings on wet, unstable ground? The answer came from Italy. There was a technique called the slurry wall, never before used at this scale anywhere in the United States. The plan was straightforward. Before construction of the towers could even begin, build a massive underground wall, a wall that would keep the Hudson River out. This wall was 3 feet, about 91 centimeters thick, and it went 80 feet deep into the ground. Workers would pour a mixture of bentonite clay and water into a trench, then fill it with concrete. Once the entire wall was complete, engineers removed all the soil from inside, down to bedrock. And the empty space that remained became known as the Bathtub, a 3,500 feet long, watertight underground structure. Inside this bathtub were subway lines, parking, a shopping mall, and the PATH train terminal, connecting New York to New Jersey. The towers weren't just above ground, there was an entire world beneath them. September 11, 2001, 8:46 in the morning, the first plane hit the North Tower. Then the second, and then something happened that nobody had anticipated. Both towers collapsed, and underground, the concrete floors that were providing structural support to the slurry wall were completely destroyed. Engineers immediately understood one thing: the bathtub walls were standing because of those basement floors. When those floors were destroyed, the wall lost its support. And if that wall failed, the engineers present at the site reported, if the slurry wall collapsed, you would get an uncontrolled flow from the Hudson River straight into the World Trade Center, from there into the PATH station, and then into the entire New York subway system. Just think about this for 1 second. The towers have fallen. Thousands of people are already dead. Rescue workers are inside. And underground, a time bomb is ticking. The full pressure of the Hudson River pushing against a damaged wall. One engineering report stated that more than 50% of the slurry wall had been damaged. Groundwater was already seeping through the cracks, and rescue workers were operating on that site without knowing what was beneath their feet. Engineers immediately went to work. More than 1,000 new steel cables were drilled into the wall to anchor it back to the bedrock. Every hour, every night, without stopping. By spring 2002, when the debris was finally cleared, that wall was still standing. This is perhaps the greatest untold engineering story of 9/11. The towers were gone, the fires were finally out, and somehow, against all odds, the slurry wall was still standing. But that created a completely new problem. What do you do with the most traumatized piece of land in America? Some people believe the entire site should remain untouched forever as a memorial for the victims. Others believed America needed to rebuild immediately and prove that fear had not won. Architects proposed massive new towers, families pushed back, and government agencies fought over who would control the future of Ground Zero. But while the world argued about what should be built above ground, engineers were focused on something far more urgent happening below it. That original slurry wall was never meant to sit exposed for years after a disaster like this. It was still holding back water pressure from the Hudson River, and every delay made engineers more nervous. The longer rebuilding took, the longer they had to depend on a damaged underground system that had already survived far more than it was ever designed for, and delays kept getting worse. Designs were scrapped, security concerns forced major redesigns. Costs exploded, eventually reaching over $4 billion for One World Trade Center alone. Years passed, and Ground Zero remained an open wound in the middle of New York City. Then engineers finally began digging again, and what they found underground created another massive problem nobody expected. Excavation finally began, and almost immediately, engineers realized something important. This wasn't ordinary ground. The entire site was built on landfill, centuries of compressed rubble, soil, and even old debris from New York's early shoreline. Bedrock wasn't close. It was nearly 65 feet below the surface, but reaching it wasn't the real challenge. The real problem was what they found along the way. Manhattan's bedrock, known as Manhattan schist, isn't uniform. Some sections are extremely strong, while others contain weak, fractured layers of mica. That meant engineers couldn't assume the ground would behave the same everywhere. Every single foundation point had to be individually tested and adjusted. One wrong assumption about the ground beneath, and a foundation column could shift under the weight of the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere. And then came another complication, something far more dangerous in a city like New York. Right through the construction zone ran the PATH train tunnel, the direct link between New Jersey and Manhattan, and it couldn't stop. So while engineers were drilling deep into bedrock, cutting through steel, and stabilizing underground structures, trains kept running above and beside the construction site like nothing was happening. Every few minutes, a train passed just meters away from active engineering work below ground. One wrong move, and a major transit line could be compromised. But even that wasn't the most visually shocking part of the rebuild. As the underground structure began to take shape, architect Santiago Calatrava introduced a completely different vision. Instead of just rebuilding a transit station, he designed something that would become a symbol. Inspired, the Oculus, a massive white structure rising from the ground like a skeletal form opening toward the sky. Part transportation hub, part architectural sculpture, and underneath it all, a complex underground network came together. A transit hub, a shopping concourse, and a memorial space, all built into the same ground that once held disaster. But the most impressive part wasn't what they built. It was the fact that they built it while the city above never stopped moving. Now let's talk about the building that stands on top of all of this. One World Trade Center, the Freedom Tower. People say it is just a building. Engineers know it is a lesson. The base of the building, from the ground up through 20 stories, is a reinforced concrete podium, 200 by 200 feet, concrete walls 28 inches thick. This design was added in 2005 following security recommendations from the New York Police Department. Why? Because if a vehicle bomb were to detonate outside, the concrete podium would absorb the blast. Ordinary concrete handles 3,000 to 6,000 psi of compressive strength. One World Trade Center used concrete rated at 12,000 psi, 2 to 4 times stronger than standard. The foundation contains 70-ton steel beams. The core walls at the base are 60 inches, that is 5 feet thick. And the fear that was greatest of all, the Hudson River. Engineers preserved the original slurry wall, and in front of it built a new, deeper bathtub, going 85 feet underground. Double protection. Separate drainage systems exist for flooding. Redundant systems are in place. If one fails, another takes over. And the thing that caused the most pain on 9/11, the staircases. In the Twin Towers, staircases were narrow and located in the central core. A single plane impact directly damaged them. In one WTC, one entire staircase is reserved exclusively for emergency services. Firefighters have their own separate route. Every fear was converted into a design decision. The Twin Towers were not just two buildings. They were an entire underground civilization. Train tunnels, a mall, foundations, and a wall that was keeping New York from flooding. When they fell, all of that came under threat too. Engineers had two options: walk away or rebuild. Stronger, smarter. This time, make the fear part of the design itself. They chose the second option. And today, beneath the ground, New York City has its strongest foundation ever built. A wall that is still holding back the Hudson River. A train that is still running. A building designed for the world that came after September 11. Sometimes, the things that cannot be seen on the surface are the most important things of all. If you want to understand the mind-blowing engineering behind the world's most massive megaprojects, their hidden dangers, and the truths buried deep beneath the surface, just like this, Then subscribe to Grand Project Files right now, because our next deep dive is going to be even more shocking. See you in the next video.